Fine. All right. So buyer criteria sheet. This I feel like is such kind of like a resource that is not hyped nearly enough because like Stacy and I have been talking about over the last couple of days, this can come in handy, especially when you have people who tend to be motivated, at least they appear to be. But when it comes down to it and you find a property that meets their needs, suddenly there's a problem with it. And it's usually some menial, small thing that can easily be overcome, or even to the point where it sounds like an excuse, they just don't want to move forward. So enter a tool, which is what you see here called the buyer criteria sheet. This again would normally be taught during buyer conversion, but I've tried to extract what I think are probably the most critical resources that come from our classes, and then just do a class on those resources as a way to kind of put them front and center and for y'all, and also explain the benefits and how they work.
Not to distract you while you
Not at
are
all.
recording, but if you feel like it is that they're just making an excuse,
Mhm.
do you handle it differently than this?
I think if you've already gone through this process, then yes, that would be another opportunity to have just kind of a sit at the kitchen island, sit at the kitchen table conversation. And at that point, I would recommend doing a recap of all the properties that have been shown and the feedback, and then just kind of bring them back to ground zero, so to speak, and say, you know, when we talked about your needs at the beginning of our conversation, those needs have appeared to have changed. So I just want to make sure moving forward, we're on the right page, because this is a unique market and we have to be able to move forward, not only in an effective way, but an efficient way, so that you guys don't have to look at 30 properties, and so that the sellers don't have to be showing 30 properties. We want to make sure that we can put all of the options on paper, narrow it down to the ones that fit our needs, at least 70% of those needs, and then go see those. Okay, because here's what happens as a buyer. When you start to put that many into the equation, you don't remember any of them. They just become one big blur, and then you're working against yourself anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the buyer criteria sheet, when would we use this? I think there are multiple points of entry, so to speak, on when you could introduce something like this. But the main one is that first initial meeting when you have a new buyer that indicates that they're ready to go and look at property. But very similarly, and this is what I was sharing with Stacy when we talked about this, without having a predetermined list of what their needs are and what their wants are, and needs and wants are two totally different things. Without knowing what that is ahead of time, it's the same thing of going to the grocery store without a list. Bad things happen when you go to the grocery store without a list. However,
buy the whole store.
Buy the whole store, and it's nothing that you really want, and it's really nothing that you really need. It's just bad all the way around. So the buyer criteria sheet works the same exact way. So what you see here, it says, help me help you. Identify the following features and amenities as they apply to what you need and what you want. A need, which they would just mark with an N, that is a must-have required item. That is going to be the thing that is a deal breaker if the home doesn't come with that particular thing. For my mom, it's a fireplace. She's got to have a fireplace. For some, it's a third car garage. For some, it's a pool. Whatever that gas, gas stove, whatever that is a non-negotiable. So that it would be marked with an N in that column, the appropriate column. Now, on the other hand, a want is something that you'd like to have, but it's not going to be a deal breaker. So maybe you would like to have a breakfast room, but you wouldn't cross the house off the list if it didn't have it. Maybe you would like to have, an in-ground sprinkler system, but it's not going to be a deal breaker. Okay, that's a want. Needs are non-negotiables, have to haves. Wants are, that'd be great if it had it, but I'm not going to cross the house off the list if it doesn't. Okay. Now, if there's something that they know that they absolutely do not want, maybe it's an electric stove, or maybe it's acreage. They don't want acreage. Maybe they do not want a 2-story house. Okay. They can strike those completely. And why this tool is valuable is because this is not only a very compelling visual example of what they need and want, but this is also valuable because you're having both of them go through this process. This is handy down the line because even though somebody might be more vocal between the two, maybe it's just the quiet one that makes the decisions. Okay. And if they're saying, if the loud one is like, well, I don't care about that, but then the one who's actually making the decisions is like, well, I do, and we're not moving forward, then you basically spent all of this time working towards a goal that they don't want. Okay. This is also highly, highly helpful whenever you have their criteria and then you go into the MLS to pull the properties that match it, because you can then print out those MLS detail sheets and highlight all of the needs that those properties meet, as well as all of the wants in a different color that they also meet. So that when you go to show, you can visually let them see on those printouts all of the ones where their needs are met, and then all of the ones who maybe it has great curb appeal, but none of their needs are met, or maybe only 2 of their needs are met. Okay, so visually it can be a very compelling tool because most people are visual, like over 3/4 of people, myself included. So that is the exercise. You would sit down with them. Now, when else can you use this? Like what Stacy's been dealing with. Maybe you go through this exercise, you have them go through it, you find properties that meet 70% or 7 out of 10, 3/4. Okay, let that be your rule of thumb. If a property meets about 3/4 worth of what their needs and wants are, more importantly, their needs, those are the ones that you should show. And I think it's okay to tell them that. Like, listen, according to you both, these are your non-negotiables, and this house meet 70 or 75% more of those needs. These are the properties that I think we should put at the top of our list and go see first. This also helps down cut on those properties that they're being seen. Okay. Because if you're going to show them those printouts and then you've got 2 that really fit the bill and then the other ones really don't, it's a complete waste of your time and theirs to go see those properties.
What if they keep pushing to want to see it still?
I would ask what's important to them about that.
Okay.
And I would ask them, have your needs changed based on what we talked about when we first started meeting? Because otherwise it's a wild goose chase. And at that point, they're just throwing something at the wall and hoping that they can fall in love with
Yeah.
it. And that's a recipe for disaster. These are the same types of people who back out when they do finally decide on a property, when they've looked at 40, because they either don't really know what it is that they want, or they're just hoping that it's going to work.
Yeah.
And they're not all the way in committed. But what I was saying too, long way around, this can be very helpful if their needs do change, like what you're dealing with, where you've found the properties that according to them, that's what they want. But then they're like, I don't know. Well, it has this one tiny little thing that's inconsequential, but we can't see past it. Remind them of what their needs are. Pull this sheet back out. Every time that you go show, have this sheet with you. And also have those MLS printout sheets that can show visually the needs that it meets as well as the wants. Now, below here, you see some additional information. Do they have a preference on square footage? Do they have a preference if it's newish, older? What's their budget range? Their school district, do they have a preference? They want, a subdivision? Is it a particular neighborhood? That's where you can kind of write in those notes, as well as some other details like what is their timeline? How soon are they really needing to move? Are they looking, or would they consider new construction? Know that ahead of time. Do you have to sell your property first? All of those things that you would normally get out of them on those first meeting, that's all here too. But it's a really, really good thing to have in your tool belt to refer back to whenever it comes to the showing process. I know some of our agents are utilizing this. Some have created this as a Google form that they send to their client ahead of time. Either way, I think it works really well, but my advice would be to have a copy every single time you're showing property to refer back to.
Okay.
Hey, Kristen, I have a question.
Go for it.
If you I'm not super familiar with the whole Google form. I mainly use Office.
Yeah.
If you make a Google form, can they fill it out on the computer, or do they have to print it out?
They can fill it out on the computer, and then they can do it from their cell phone. And then you can actually set it to where when they submit their form, it'll email it to you as a PDF, and then you can just print it.
All right, I'm gonna have to look into it.
Okay.
I might need help.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime at all.
Google form. I've looked at Google Forms before, and I'm like, what the heck?
I love them. I use them all the time. And what's really great about it too, Ty, is you can it's up to you on what you include on that form. So you can get their email address. And then what's great about Google Forms is it aggregates all of the responses in a Google sheet, like an Excel spreadsheet. It updates it in real time. So that's another kind of layer that you'd have all that information in one place.
Sorry, I know that was off topic.
No, it's a good question. Do y'all have any other questions on the buyer criteria sheet as I've explained it? Or how you would use it?
No, I really like it though.
Again, I think it's important to explain the why behind the why. Why are we utilizing this? Because we want to make sure that we have a focused approach, a very intentional, a very proactive approach to finding your next property. Because for you, it's not enough that you find it, it's that you find it, but they also love it.
Mhm.
Okay, and that's what you're dealing with right now. That is your headache and your heartburn right now.
Heartburn. I like that.
It is.
I
I
know,
mean,
I
that
do
is
got a
totally what
heartburn.
it is.
It is.
But that's why we do it, because we believe in a focused, intentional, and a proactive approach. We do not believe in just hoping for the best and luck. There's a little bit of luck, but we have a process, and this is part of our process. Okay. Any other questions, comments? This is a quick one because it's literally a one pager. But I hope I explained it where you guys feel like you'd be comfortable, utilizing it moving forward.
Can you send me a copy of this?
Yeah, I'll send it your way.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, guys. Well, Ty, I so appreciate you being here, and thank you for your questions. Those are great. I will upload this class into our list of recorded classes for future viewing. And then Ty, I will send this to you as soon as we're done here.
All right, thanks so much.
All right. Yeah.
All right, bye.
I'm seeing a lot of people from Lake Charles. I'm about to boost a post of this because